Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Nintendo 3DS XL and basically see how this particular gaming console is going to hold up throughout 2024. But I will definitely tell you, this console is more than just how it's going to hold up this year, whether it's worth buying or not, because the 3DS and the 3DS XL consoles were so amazing. I love these devices so much, and this was honestly one of the main 3DS, consoles that I basically owned. I basically own all of them now, but for a time, my first foray into the 3DS lineup was the 3DS XL, and it was a very interesting experience because it was a much bigger console than my DSi and especially my Nintendo DS Lite that I used. Pretty much my number one gaming console of all time I used was my Nintendo DS Lite, and the 3DS XL was so crazy. And then literally a few months later, I modded it, and then it was a completely different device after I modded it. It was way worth buying at that point. So I will tell you, the console itself, the big thing going on now is that these consoles have been going up in value so much. So if you're somebody who owns a 3DS XL, it might just be worth it to kind of keep it because these things are only becoming more and more rare, and the value of these things are only becoming more and more expensive. If you're a collector, you might want to just go ahead and buy it as soon as possible because you never know. There's a chance these consoles will go down in value in the future, but it's only looking like these things are going to go up and up and up in value for the next couple of years. And then on top of that, if you're somebody who actually wants to go ahead and play these games, these 3DS games, the eShop is kind of closed down, so there's kind of a downside of there. You're going to have to basically buy all of your games if you haven't already bought any in the brand new market or in the used market, so just kind of keep that in mind. But regardless, this console brought a lot of cool stuff to Nintendo and to the foray of all the different games and consoles that have came out since then. And it's funny because the 3DS XL and the 3DS, those consoles were basically the things that were keeping Nintendo up afloat while their Wii U wasn't really doing that well. A lot of people tend to forget that, and a lot of people sometimes I still see on Reddit, some people saying that the 3DS and 3DS XL lineup were a failure or whatever. That was not the case. The Nintendo 3DS lineup maybe was a little bit of a flop in the beginning of their lineup, but they quickly fixed it. Like within a year or two, everything was pretty much fixed for the most part, and they were able to go and fix a lot of those issues and basically drop the price down, release a couple more games, and then a lot more people were able to get their hands on the 3DSs. Then with the 3DS XL, this console was also a pretty decent, selling point. I like this console so much because of that. Now, with the actual hardware itself, when you take a look at it from the outside, it's still a pretty good looking console. It's very hard for these things to kind of look super outdated. When you look at the original Nintendo DS, that thing looked outdated before it even came out. So that was like a super crazy thing that happened there. With the 3DS XL, this is a little bit of a different story. The thing with the 3DS XL you have to remember is that this particular console basically was, it was a successor of the DSi XL with the, 3DS components, and they did a really good job. The front top of this thing had that little texture plate to it. It was really cool. And then you had the dual camera setup up there as well, which is actually pretty wild having a dual camera setup like that on this type of device. On top of that, when you flip this thing open, that's where you get the dual screens on this thing. So I like the 3DSs because the top screen was bigger than the bottom screen. So I really like that. And apparently from the 3dsfandom.com wiki page, they say that apparently the top screen, so the screens are 90% larger than the Nintendo 3DS's model, which is pretty crazy. So the top screen was 4.88 inches, the bottom one was 4.18 inches, and the battery life increased by 86%. That is absolutely crazy. The 3DS, I don't even remember. I'm sure the battery life was okay on that thing, but this thing was giving you a much better battery life from that standpoint, which again is another really cool thing going on for this particular device. And I personally loved having that on this particular console. And when you're getting better battery life and you're getting just bigger, displays, that's a very cool thing going on for this particular device. And that in and of itself was a super cool thing going on here as well. On top of that, the screen itself was pretty good. You're getting the joystick on the left side, the D-pad on the left side as well, and then the A, B, X, Y buttons on the right side. And overall, when I'm looking at this particular console, even when it's flipped open, it really doesn't look that outdated. It actually looks like a fairly new console. Obviously it doesn't look that new, but compared to the Switch, this thing doesn't really look that outdated. And I do think it's actually a very good looking console for the most part. And although me personally, I'm looking at the 3D toggle, that really wasn't that big of a deal. I look at it, I'm not really that big of a fan of it. I still don't think it really made a lot of sense for them to do it. And I'm glad they did end up taking away from the 2DS XL models, but still this thing looks very good. I love this console because of the things it brought, but the best advantage I would say for the DS, the 3DS lineup in general, was the fact that they were able to go through and make this thing backwards compatible. Now, the best advantage I would say, for the 3DS XL is the fact that this particular console was backwards compatible with all the Nintendo DS games and the DSi games as well. So this is something that's very, very important, because when you're buying this console, it's not like you have to go and just only buy consoles for that, like buy games for that particular console. You can buy games from all sorts of different consoles all over the place from the previous, the Nintendo consoles from the previous generation, and you have the capability of playing them on this particular device, which is actually very cool. But that's not even touching the Nintendo 3DS games that came out for this console. There were so many 3DS games, like big, massive games that came out for this console, which were one of a kind, that were amazing, and a lot of firsts for this type of generation as well. The first thing, there was a very good amount of graphic capability with this particular console. A lot of people said it was about the same thing as the Nintendo GameCube. I don't know if that's 100% the case, but it is very cool if that it was even kind of remotely true, because you were actually getting that type of capability within this device, which was honestly very, very awesome. Now, on top of that, you're getting, the best-selling game of this thing was Mario Kart. That was a very cool thing. The fact that this thing got a very big upgrade in a Mario Kart game. Maybe it wasn't the best Mario Kart of all time. Maybe some people would say that, but it was a very good upgrade coming from Mario Kart DS. You're also getting new Super Mario Bros. 2, which they just had to make here. You're getting a new Animal Crossing New Leaf, which people said at the time and still say it's probably one of the best Animal Crossings of all time. You were able to get Super Mario 3D Land as well, which I actually liked a lot. I finally finished it, I think, last year, and that was a very, very fun game as well. But the biggest thing, you finally got a new Super Smash Bros. For a portable console. This was the first time we ever got any sort of, portable Super Smash, which was crazy. That was something that's really cool. And it was almost the same thing as the Wii U version, which was really cool. Obviously, the graphics weren't as great, but you were getting that here, which was honestly very awesome. You were getting some remakes of some Nintendo 64 games as well, like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask you got on this particular, console as well. You had a Super Mario Maker for this console. You had so many things available for this type of device. One of my favorite games, though, was The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds. That was a very good game, and that was actually a unique one specifically for the 3DS. That was also one of my most favorite games that I played. I just finished it, I think, like a year and a half ago, and that was a very fun game. It's funny, I never played it on my actual 3DS, but that was a very fun game. There were lots and lots of games available for the Nintendo 3DS in general. And what I'll definitely tell you is, in my opinion, the 3DS is the gift that keeps on giving. I talked about earlier about how I modded this thing. There are so many things you can do with a modded 3DS, and there's still a very active community of modders, who are still supporting the 3DS and still giving us a lot of capability and lots of updates within this console from that standpoint as well. So I do think the Nintendo 3DS is still worth buying. The 3DS XL is still worth buying in 2024, but I think it's more than worth buying. I think it's worth experiencing. Like, this console is still very cool. I like this console a lot, and I still think it's completely worth buying. It's not a perfect console by any means, but I do think Nintendo did a really good job with this particular device, and I still think it's very much worth buying for the most part. So in terms of that kind of covers it up here. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that helps me so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.